Mangwana ni mwalelepo vukenjani kwekwa Svanave Africa. Welcome to Africa Good Morning, the news and current affairs show bringing you everything you need to know happening on the African continent and beyond. You are joined by Ashwin Betty and Diana Master. How are you, Diana?
I'm doing well, Ashwin. How are you doing?
Oh, fantastic. It's a Monday. We can get it going. It's a chance to make the most out of the week.
Of course.
Yes.
Speaking of making the most out of the week, let's talk about what you can expect in today's broadcast. UN unable to feed refugees in Chad next month. 4 die in Kenya while fasting to meet Jesus. Thabo Bester appears in court and claims he's not safe in prison, but he doesn't provide evidence. We're also going to be crossing over to Zimbabwe to speak to Talin Gore, and she will update us on all the news and making headlines that side. Stick around, we get into our top stories right after this.
Welcome to What's Cooking, where culinary passion meets expert insights.
Somebody must really want to cook and want to cook good food.
Immerse yourself in the bustling world of professional kitchens as top chefs create mouth-watering dishes. Join us for in-depth interviews as our host explores the experiences and expertise of our guest chefs. Don't miss out. Tune in to What's Cooking on NTV every Friday at 2100 hours and let the culinary adventure begin.
Heading into our top stories, the UN is unable to feed refugees in Chad in the next month. The United Nations warned on Friday that it would no longer be able to feed 600,000 refugees in Chad within weeks unless it receives urgent international funding. The UN's World Food Programme said Chad was hosting the biggest refugee population in West and Central Africa, with the numbers rising due to the unrest in neighboring Sudan. The WFP said that despite refugees being a priority, it had to reduce its plans to support 455,600 refugees down to only around 270,000 in April. WFP wants $142.7 million for the next 6 months to feed all crisis-affected populations in Chad, including refugees, the 380,000 internally displaced, and other Chadians who have been hit by extreme weather in recent years. Chad is facing its 4th consecutive year of very high severe food insecurity. The country suffered the worst lean season in a decade last year, plus the most devastating floods in 30 years. WFP said there were 1.9 million people in Chad who are food insecure.
Now, in a controversial story, 4 die in Kenya while fasting to meet Jesus. Excuse me. 4 people were on Thursday found dead and nearly a dozen others hospitalized in Kenya's coastal Kilifi County after being rescued while waiting the imminent end of the world. Police said the group was found in a forest where they had been living for several days after being told by a local preacher to fast while waiting to meet Jesus. The authorities said they rescued 11 people. 6 of them were emaciated and in critical condition. Police said they will resume a search for members of the group on Friday morning, following reports that others were still in the forest. Police are reported to have found a fresh grave in the forest, which will be investigated on Friday. The worshippers belong to Good News International Church that is led by a local pastor who has been on the police radar for allegedly urging his followers to starve to death in order to reach heaven faster. The pastor is currently out on police bail after he was charged last month over the death of 2 children whose parents are among his followers.
Now moving over to South Africa, convicted rapist and murderer Thabo Bester appeared in court on Friday for the first time after breaking out of the country's most secure prisons less than a year ago. Bester wore a matching yellow tracksuit and had his hair tied back as he sat in the dock in Bloemfontein Magistrates Court on Friday afternoon. The man, dubbed the Facebook rapist for the way he coaxed his victims, spent almost a year on the run after he broke out of the Mahwang Correctional Center in May last year. His escape was kept under wraps until community news publisher Ground Up revealed that Bester was not the person who was found dead in his cell. Bester will continue to serve his life sentence for rape and murder, but will now face the added charges of fraud, defeating the ends of justice, escaping and violating a body. The state's lawyer Selo Matloko argued on Friday that Bester need not appear on Monday when his co-accused Mangudu Mana, her father Zolile Sekeleni, former G-Force employee Senoke Matsowara, and CCTV camera installer Teboho Lipolo returned to court.
Now, Ghana first to approve Oxford's malaria vaccine. Ghana has become the first country in the world to approve a new malaria vaccine from Oxford University, a potential step forward in fighting a disease that kills hundreds of thousands of children each year. The approval is unusual as it comes before the publication of final stage trial data. It is unclear when the vaccine may be rolled out in Ghana, as other regulatory bodies, including the World Health Organization, are still assessing its safety and effectiveness. The WHO can provide support, but it's not an approving institution. The FDA has the mandate as a regulator, and that is what we have done, Delise Darko, CEO of Ghana's Food and Drugs Authority, told Reuters. Darko did not comment on the timeline for the vaccine rollout, as that will be organized by the Ghana Health Service, the Ghana Malaria Program, and the country's immunization body, the EPI. Those organizations did not immediately respond to requests for comment. The mosquito-borne disease kills more than 600,000 people each year, most of them children in Africa. Oxford scientist Adrian Hill said Ghana's drug regulator has approved the vaccine domestically for the age group at highest risk of death from malaria, children aged 5 months to 36 months.
Now, 2 pastors of Angolan religious sect Army of Faith have been arrested for allegedly donning replicas of Angolan armed forces uniforms, local media reports. Novo Jornal website reports that the 2 were arrested on Wednesday by officers from Criminal Investigation Service with red pins similar to the ones worn by army generals. SIC spokesperson Manuel Halaiwa is quoted as saying the 2 will be charged with illegal use of military uniform and exercising illegal religious activities because their sect is not registered. It follows a viral video that showed the 2 pastors presiding over a ceremony attended by more than 80 youths, some of whom were dressed in replicas of army uniform. The VOA recently reported that the government had launched a crackdown on unregistered churches and those that purport to perform miracles.
And now bringing us to the end of our top stories, EAC states turn a blind eye on Lake Victoria transport. The Lake Victoria Transport Act of 2007, enacted years ago to regulate maritime safety in the shared water body, is stuck on the rocks. It has lost favor with the riparian states, which instead consider their respective national maritime laws more relevant. Moreover, a host of key regulations required for full implementation of the regional legislation are reportedly not in place. The law is not fully implemented, insisted a report tabled before a recent sitting of the East African Legislative Assembly. Instead of the legislation enacted in 2007, the riparian states tend to favor their national laws instead of this law. This is the second time in a week of reported failure by the East African Community Partner States to embrace the regional laws. It was revealed last week that Tanzania, Uganda and Kenya have declined to align their national laws with the EAC anti-counterfeit bill adopted since 2013. The report on Lake Victoria Transport Act was tabled by the House Committee on Agriculture, Tourism and Natural Resources during a session held in Bujumbura.
That brings us to the end of our top stories on Africa. Good morning. Josiah Tongogara, Herbert Chitepo, Joshua Mkabuko Komo. These are names you might not immediately recognize, but were pivotal in the independence of Zimbabwe. As Zimbabwe celebrates its Independence Day tomorrow, we'll be talking to Talent Gore after the break about how the country will be looking at those commemorations. Stay with us.
Welcome to My.NA Cars, your ultimate destination for everything automotive.
I am your host, Diana Master. Teamwork makes the dream work, right?
Discover the latest models, innovative technologies, and expert insights from our passionate hosts. Learn essential maintenance tips and get exclusive behind-the-scenes access to the automotive industry. Don't miss My.NA Cars on NTV every Thursday at 2100 hours. Tune in and ignite your passion for automobiles.
Now, as Ashwin highlighted before the break, Zimbabwe is celebrating 43 years of independence tomorrow. Here to give us an update on how the country will be celebrating, Talent Gore. Good morning, Talent. How are you doing today?
Good morning, Ashwin. Good morning, Diana, and Africa. Good morning. So tomorrow, Zimbabwe celebrates 43 years since attaining independence on April 18 in 1980. That momentous event in 1980 followed a protracted liberation struggle during which tens of thousands of our people paid the ultimate price. In commemorating Independence Day, the nation recalls our gallant sons and daughters sacrificed their lives to liberate Zimbabwe from the shackles of colonial bondage. So this year are being held in Mount Darwin, which was formerly known as Mount Fura, renamed to Mount Darwin by the hunter occupier Frederick Courtney Selous back in the 19th century. So the liberation struggle flame it on Friday in Harare, and it traveled from Harare to Mount Darwin, which is an island central where the celebrations are being held. And apparently there are going to be many activities to commemorate sessions, and also some of the celebrations will be held in different parts of the, and they'll be led by ministers of states in those in various states, in various provinces. The main event, which will be held in Mandara, will be headed by the president himself, President Emerson Mnangagwa. So we are very much excited with the celebrations tomorrow.
Yes, yes. I do wonder if the celebrations will be coupled with reflections on what the initial vision was for Zimbabwe and where the country is now. Moving on, more screening and counseling centers for drug and illegal substance. Please tell us about that.
Yes, President Emerson Mnangagwa said the government had designated more screening and counseling centers for drug and illegal substance abuses. Right now, Zimbabwe is battling a drug addiction crisis, which is affecting mostly the youth, with existing rehabilitation centers unable to cope with rising demand for counseling and rehabilitation services. So the president has said that the government has availed $500 million to ensure that more counseling and more rehabilitation centers are built. Apparently, the rehabilitation centers which are found in Zimbabwe, most of them, they are private. The people, they can't afford to go to private rehabilitation centers. The government owned, they are quite overwhelmed with people, servicing about 5,000 people at a time. So they are overwhelmed, and now government has come up with a plan to make sure that they build more rehabilitation centers to cater for everyone.
All right, now finally, South Africa arrests 41 Zim illegal miners. Could you please give us the details?
Yes, 41 mentored Zimbabweans were in South Africa for illegal chrome mining. The South African police received information about illegal mining activities taking place in Gapa Shah village under the Sefa Tang mine and swiftly reacted. Upon arrival at the site, police found the suspects busy mining chrome at the mine without authorization. When the suspects saw police, they ran into a nearby bush, and others went inside the self-made tunnels to avoid being. Apparently, the police also confiscated 12 generators and 10 jackhammers, all valued at 170,000 rand, as well as chrome ore worth 1 million rand from the suspects. The male suspects are aged between 18 and 43, and 41 undocumented Zimbabweans, one Mozambican national and one South African citizen. They are set to appear in court very soon.
All right. Thank you very much, Talent, for bringing us the news stories from Zimbabwe, and do enjoy Independence Day tomorrow.
You are welcome, and thank you for having me.
It's always good having you in Africa. Good morning. Let's head straight to the weather predictions. All right, let's head into the economic news stories. South Africa has managed to attract new investment commitments from investors worth about $84 billion over the next 5 years. Now, President Cyril Ramaphosa met with investors as part of the 5th South Africa Investment Conference. The Chief Executive Officer of the South African Breweries, Richard Rivett-Carnac, explains that their investment pledge is expected to create 40,000 jobs in the country. Now, while President Ramaphosa put forward his multi-billion-dollar US investment target, South Africans on the street believe that he needs to focus on eradicating electricity blackouts in order to boost investor confidence.
Now moving over to Mozambique, China Tax Authority issues guides for Chinese investors in Mozambique and other Portuguese-speaking countries. The Tax Authority of Guangdong Province in southeastern China has launched a set of guides for investment in Portuguese-speaking countries, the Chinese press said on Thursday. According to the official newspaper Nanfang Daily, the Guangdong Provincial Tax Service on Wednesday launched the first series of tax guides for Chinese investors covering Portugal, Mozambique and Cabo Verde. The documents include information about the economy, business environment, tax policies, the tax collection and management system and bilateral tax agreements in force in the three countries. The aim is to provide references and guidances to companies in the process of going global, said at the presentation of the guides the head of the Tax Corporation Office for Portuguese-speaking countries and regions, Yang Hongbing.
Let's have a look at the economic indicators just before we head into the sport.
Discover the breathtaking beauty of Namibia with Tourismus, a captivating program that uncovers the country's diverse landscapes, wildlife, and cultural experiences. Featuring insightful interviews with tourism experts, each episode takes you on a mesmerizing journey, exploring Namibia's majestic sand dunes, vibrant wildlife, and unique attractions. Watch Tourismus on NTV, Saturdays at 20:30 in German, and Sundays at 6 p.m. in English, for a heartwarming and unforgettable adventure.
To another exciting episode of Irongo Talk.
Is die weer en vertel ook vir julle waar die vis heel moontlik kan byt.
So it was a topsy-turvy sporting weekend, particularly for people who have something to contend for. Manchester City and Arsenal for Manchester United. They managed to tick a box.
Listen. What matters is we won our match, and you guys
are on top of the table. So Arsenal remains on top of the table
by
with 74 points, whilst Manchester City follows with 70 points. Manchester City managing to put away the team they were playing on Saturday 3-1. Arsenal letting go of a 2-0 lead once again, 2 weeks in a row. Some immaturity starting to show from the side as Arsenal drew 2-2 yesterday. Moving over to rugby, it was the United Rugby Championship and the Bulls got back to winning ways. Unfortunately, the Stormers, my team, lost at home. In tennis, it was the final of the Monte Carlo Masters. And in MotoGP, it was the Grand Prix of Americas in Austin. In cricket, the Indian Premier League continued. Next time Ari comes through, he's going to give us all the details. But those have been our sports stories on Africa Good Morning. We'll be back with the highlights.
Welcome to Active Kids, a daily TV show that sparks creativity, learning, and fun for young minds. With exciting activities and lessons, Active Kids inspires curiosity and a love for learning.
New face to the 15.
The perfect mix of play and education. Don't miss out on the fun. Tune in to Active Kids on NTV every weekday at 10 o'clock and let the adventure begin.
Right in the nick of time, Ari Hogard is here to give us those detailed sports updates. Ari, if you could take it from the tennis news and keep it as brief as possible.
Yes, morning, Ashwin, everyone. Yes, you talked about the others, the Arsenal, etc. But we'll talk about the tennis. This was a big tournament. It's a 1,000 tournament, and that is Andrei Rublev. He is from Russia, and so he's the winner of the Monte Carlo Masters, a big tournament on clay. It's the first, one of the first big tournaments on clay that starts before the French Open. He played against Holger Rune. There he is, a youngster coming up from Finland, and it's Andrei Rublev that won the game by 5-7, 6-2, and 7-5. So a great result for him. Leading up to the French Open that's coming up, big names that played in the tournament that fell out. It was Djokovic, Novak Djokovic, the world's leading player that dropped out in the round of 16. Then also Medvedev, Daniel Medvedev, and Stefanos Tsitsipas. And then just briefly also MotoGP. It was the America's Grand Prix on the motorcycles all the way there in Austin, the fast motorcycles, and it was an eventful, dramatic race won by Alex Rins on his Honda. And for Southern African interest, it was lower down in 13th position. It was Brad Binder on his KTM in 13th position. The leader, Francesco Bagnaia, he dropped out in a crash just before the end. So it was Alex Rins on his Honda winning the Grand Prix of the Americas. So that's the international sports news, and looking forward to a big soccer game coming up the 26th of April. That will be Arsenal playing against Manchester City. That will probably determine in a big way who's going to win the English Premier League.
There's no need to go that far. We're playing Southampton first on Friday. Let's just one thing at a time. Wow.
And when Arsenal faces Manchester City, I will probably be wearing blue that day.
Wow. You see, Manchester United, no loyalty whatsoever. This is 2 Africa. Good morning. We'll be recapping the show after the break.
Welcome to Active Kids, a daily TV show that sparks creativity, learning, and fun for young minds. With exciting activities and lessons, Active Kids inspires curiosity and a love for learning.
New face to the 15.
The perfect mix of play and education. Don't miss out on the fun. Tune in to Active Kids on NTV every weekday at 10 o'clock and let the adventure begin.
You're still watching Africa Good Morning, and we've reached the end of our broadcast. But before we say goodbye, let's take a look at the highlights, just in case you need a quick recap. UN unable to feed refugees in Chad next month. 4 die in Kenya while fasting to meet Jesus. Thabo Bester appears in court, claims he's not safe in prison, but doesn't provide evidence. South Africans fear energy crisis could hinder investment pledges.
All right, that brings us to the end of this episode of Africa Good Morning. Make sure you catch the repeat from 8:30, the same time, the same place you found us now. And remember, our GoTV channel will be 25. It will be moving to 25 very, very soon. So keep an eye out for that. Diane and I will be making our way to Smell the Coffee. We'll see you there in about 30 minutes. For everybody else, have a good morning.